Weapon X didn't build soldiers. It erased people and rebuilt them as weapons. Metal, commands, conditioning, until only obedience remained. Control was the altar. Names were the sacrifice. This is the hidden hierarchy of the Weapon X program, a descent from failure to apex, where humanity fades and pain becomes fuel. Let's step into the tank and see what comes back. Level 1 is where Weapon X learned by breaking people on purpose. This was not a proving ground, it was a grinder. Human baselines and unstable mutations fed into a system that didn't expect survival-only data. Most subjects died, a few became something worse. Usable. Wade Wilson before the mask, before the jokes, before the healing factor twisted him into something unkillable. The record is blunt about it. Wade was already dangerous before they touched him. A trained operator, disciplined, precise. Then came the diagnosis: cancer, terminal. And Weapon X offered what it always offered, not salvation, but possibility. He entered the hospice, the workshop for rejects. Bodies stacked not as patients, but as experiments. Wade wasn't cured, he was dismantled. Every nerve tested, every limit pushed. The lab wasn't trying to save him, it was trying to see if pain could force a switch buried in his DNA. And pain, in Weapon X, was never random. It was measured, timed, scheduled. He broke, but not uselessly. Even failure produced maps. Escape routes whispered between cages. Patterns of collapse recorded in cold files. To the program, Wade became something paradoxical. A failed subject that still generated value. A hazard asset. Dangerous even when uncontrolled. Level 1 is where intention and obedience first collide, and the program begins learning how to turn collapse into design. Then there is Marrow, Sarah of the Morlocks. Mutation expressed not as strength, but as weaponized biology. Bone grown into blades, armor, spikes erupting from within her own body. Brutal, elegant, and painful. She could tag Wolverine mid-blitz not because she was stronger, but because her body answered faster than thought. That alone marked her as valuable. But Weapon X looked deeper. The lab didn't just want power, it wanted predictability. Could bone growth be timed, routed, shaped under stress? Could trauma be turned into a lever? Marrow survived by constructing illusions, emotional armor, layered over physical mutation. Weapon X saw the opportunity immediately. If the mind could be shaped, the weapon could be directed. Her pain was not a weakness, it was a handle. Level 1 looked disposable from the outside. Weapon X never treated it that way. A subject that breaks on schedule can still reshape an operation. A collapse at the right moment can open a corridor, shift a guard, fracture a defense. The lab didn't fear failure, it engineered it. This is how Weapon X thought. A broken subject is not waste, only a weapon delayed in time. The lesson of Level 1 is simple and brutal. Pain becomes a resource when it can be scheduled. Chaos without timing is noise. Collapse on cue is control. And once collapse begins to follow scent instead of orders, the program gives it a new name: instinct. Instinct is where Weapon X stopped breaking bodies and started directing predators. The program no longer searched for survivors, it searched for hunters. Subjects whose violence did not need instruction, only release. Fear, scent, instability, these became signals. And when the signal rose high enough, instinct answered. Wild Child was the prototype. Kyle Gibney's mutation sharpened everything's senses, reflexes, aggression, until violence became his native language. He could be contained for a time, conditioned, pointed. But instinct does not obey forever. It waits, it listens, and when the air thickens with threat, it moves before thought finishes forming. There is a hunt recorded in fragments, forest, pursuit, silence where Wild Child reaches Spider-Man before the spider sense fully resolves. Not faster, earlier. Violence delivered in the moment before awareness. Weapon X understood what that meant. Wild Child did not need precise orders. He needed a boundary and a scent. Released too early, he wasted himself. Released at the right moment, he ended the chase before it began. To the program, he was not a soldier. He was a trigger pulled by the environment itself. But instinct alone is chaos. And chaos without direction is failure. That is where Kestrel enters. John Wraith, not feral, not driven by rage, but by precision. Short-range teleportation, line-of-sight insertion, movement folded through space itself. Where Wildchild hunted, Kestrel positioned. Where one tore open doors, the other stepped through them before the alarm finished sounding. He was extraction, infiltration, silent placement inside the impossible. A scalpel in a program that once only knew hammers. But even precision has limits. If he could not see the destination, he could not reach it. Mistimed the jump, and space itself became the trap. Weapon X valued him not for power, but for control, the ability to place violence exactly where it would end something, not just damage it. Together, they formed the first true evolution of the program. Not survivors, not experiments. Hunters guided by signals, not commands. Weapon X learned quickly. A predator released too soon wastes its hunger. A predator released at the right moment finishes the operation before resistance can form. This was the birth of directed instinct violence, shaped, not suppressed. The leash did not remove the animal, it turned the animal into a weapon. And once a hunter stops chasing and starts choosing, instinct becomes something colder, a weapon. A weapon is not rage, it is choice, sharpened until resistance no longer matters. At this level, Weapon X stopped creating predators and began crafting instruments. Precision replaced chaos. Violence became calculated, directional, inevitable. These were no longer subjects reacting to the battlefield. They were forces that reshaped it. Maverick Agent Zero was built for that purpose. His mutation did not simply absorb kinetic energy, it converted impact into advantage. Every strike against him became potential stored, redirected, released when it would matter most. Weapon X refined him further, stripping away scent, masking presence, shaping him into something designed to hunt the untrackable. He was made to counter Wolverine. There is a moment, buried in the violence, where a blow meant to end him instead becomes his weapon energy turned outward in a blast that tears through structure and certainty alike. This is the philosophy of Maverick. Power is not taken, it is returned. The enemy fuels their own defeat, but Maverick alone is force redirected. Copycat is force replaced. Vanessa Carlisle did not break through defenses, she became them. Genetic mimicry, perfect infiltration, identity replication, so complete she lived for months as Domino, unseen even by telepaths trained to detect deception. Not disguise, replacement. If a plan depended on a person, and she became that person, the plan no longer belonged to its creator. Weapon X valued this above brute strength. A blade can fail, a bomb can miss, but a system that cannot tell friend from infiltrator collapses from within. Copycat was not built to win fights, she was built to make fights unnecessary. Together, Maverick and Copycat defined what the program truly wanted, not monsters, not soldiers, but tools. Instruments that converted opposition into outcome. Violence that did not clash, but redirected. Identity that did not confront, but replaced. Instinct tears through doors. A weapon opens them without resistance. By the time the system realizes something is wrong, the outcome is already shifted. And when violence can be placed, shaped, and guided, it no longer needs to be unleashed. It only needs to be controlled. Power breaks resistance. Control removes the need for resistance to exist at all. At this level, Weapon X stopped asking how strong a subject was and began asking how completely a subject could dominate the field around them. Not just bodies, not just motion, perception, will, finality itself. The battlefield was no longer something to survive. It was something to own. Aurora was control through motion. Jean Marie was not simply fast, she was fragmented. A mind divided into states, each capable of directing the body differently. Weapon X saw weakness, then realized weakness could be structured. One self to observe, one self to strike, one self to overwhelm. At extreme velocity, the environment itself becomes a weapon. Air displaced into vacuum pockets, light turned blinding, space folded into angles only she can navigate. By the time others react, the event has already passed them. Speed does not just arrive sooner, it denies response entirely. Aurora did not overpower rooms. She erased their ability to act. Mesmero was control through will. No claws, no armor, no spectacle, only a voice and the fragile machinery of the human mind. Weapon X used him not as a fighter, but as proof of concept. If the strongest subject could be turned docile with a single phrase, then control had surpassed strength. Marrow did not defeat opponents. He removed their choice to resist. A whispered command, a broken gaze, and monsters became tools. But like all control systems, his power depended on precision sight, proximity, sequence. Break the chain, and the illusion collapses. Maintain it, and resistance disappears before conflict begins. If Aurora removed action, Marrow removed intention. Slayback removed finality. He did not stay dead. He did not stay broken. He did not stay ended. Biocybernetic reconstruction, elastic tissue, regenerative persistence destruction scattered him, but never erased him. Even annihilation was temporary, and every return carried memory of the last failure, reshaping him, hardening him, continuing him. He was not a tank. He was a problem that refused conclusion. Together, these three revealed the truth. Weapon X had been approaching. You do not need stronger weapons if you can control motion. You do not need faster weapons if you can control will. You do not need deadlier weapons if you can remove endings. At this level, the battlefield itself became obedient, and once a battlefield obeys, victory is no longer fought for. It is scheduled, but control is not power. Control is only the leash. And beyond the leash waits something far more dangerous, a weapon that feeds. Control bends the battlefield. Power consumes it. At this level, Weapon X stopped trying to dominate subjects and started trying to harness engines. Not soldiers, not predators, sources. Weapons that did not merely fight, but fed. Because the most dangerous weapon is not the one that strikes hardest. It is the one that grows stronger the longer the fight continues. Sabretooth was power through persistence. Victor Creed was not built, he was refined. A body like coiled steel cable, reflexes tuned by endless violence. And a psyche that did not fear pain, it welcomed it. Pain sharpened him, damage focused him, time favored him. Put him down, and he returns. Break him, and he hunts. Bury him, and he climbs back through the dirt. Weapon X tried to leash him, tried to control him, tried to turn him into a tool. But Sabretooth was never a tool, he was a cycle. Violence returning to its origin again and again. That was his true power. He did not win in moments, he won in duration. While others exhausted, Sabretooth continued. While plans collapsed, Sabretooth endured. While resistance formed, Sabretooth was already back inside the fight. He was not the strike. He was the pressure that never left. Sauron was power through consumption. Karl Lycos did not generate strength, he stole it. Life force, mutant energy, vitality itself, absorbed, converted, amplified. The more powerful the opponent, the more powerful Sauron became. Against ordinary foes, he was dangerous. Against powerful ones, he became catastrophic. Abilities drained, bodies weakened, identity stripped away and turned into fuel. And when enough energy accumulated, the transformation completed, the Predator emerged. Not man, not monster, a winged embodiment of stolen power. Weapon X saw the elegance immediately. A weapon that could grow stronger simply by existing among other weapons. No need for perfection, no need for control, only proximity to power. Sauron did not overcome resistance, he ate it. Chamber was power without biology. Jonathan Starsmore should have died the moment his mutation awakened. His chest erupted, organs erased, lungs burned away, and yet he remained. Not alive in the human sense, but sustained by a psionic furnace that replaced the body itself. He did not breathe. He did not bleed. He did not weaken the way others did. He burned. Energy contained inside a fragile human silhouette, capable of leveling structures, reshaping battlefields, and sustaining itself through sheer psychic force. But unlike Sabretooth or Sauron, Chamber's power was unstable, a reactor with no safe output, a weapon that could not fully regulate itself. Too little, and the furnace starved. Too much, and the world around him paid the cost. He was not persistence. He was not consumption. He was eruption. 3 paths. One principle, power that sustains itself becomes inevitable over time. Sabretooth feeds on endurance. Sauron feeds on others. Chamber feeds on himself. Weapon X had discovered the next truth. You do not need control if the weapon grows stronger, faster than resistance can form. You do not need strategy if time itself favors the weapon. You do not need perfection if the weapon becomes the environment. At level 5, the program stopped refining weapons. It started building engines. But engines still require ignition. And beyond ignition lies something colder, something cleaner, something Weapon X had chased from the beginning. Perfection without resistance. Perfection without chaos. Perfection without uncertainty. Power overwhelms. Perfection eliminates. At this level, Weapon X stopped experimenting. It stopped searching. It stopped guessing. For the first time, the program believed it had succeeded. Not a monster, not an engine, not a weapon that required control. A weapon that was control. Laura Kinney X-23 was not designed to be stronger than Wolverine. She was designed to be cleaner. Where Logan was chaos refined into survival, Laura was precision engineered into certainty. Adamantium only in the claws, not the skeleton. Less weight, faster healing, greater agility. Every design choice removed inefficiency. Nothing unnecessary, nothing unpredictable, nothing wasted. And unlike Logan, Laura was not broken into obedience. She was built with it. Conditioned, scripted, controlled through ritual, and trigger a synth that could flip her from human to executioner in an instant. Not rage, not instinct, activation. There is a moment in her history, cold, clinical, almost unreal, where a child walks into a room of trained killers and leaves it silent. No chaos, no spectacle, no prolonged fight, just movement, precision, termination. The footage shows almost nothing, because perfection does not linger. It completes. What made Laura surpass earlier weapons was not raw strength. Sabretooth was stronger. Sauron could grow larger. Chamber could burn hotter. But Laura required less to achieve more. Less movement, less noise, less resistance, less time. She did not overwhelm systems. She bypassed them. She did not win fights. She ended them before they fully began. This is why Weapon X valued her differently. Earlier weapons required leashes, required handlers, required correction. Laura required instructions, and instructions could be predicted. Prediction was the program's ultimate goal. Because once a weapon becomes predictable, it becomes controllable. And once it becomes controllable, it becomes perfect. Laura was not chaos like Logan, not hunger like Creed, not eruption like Chamber. She was certainty. The strike that lands exactly once. The outcome that repeats exactly the same way. The weapon that does not escalate because escalation is unnecessary. Weapon X believed it had finally created what it always wanted. A weapon without waste. A weapon without resistance. A weapon without doubt. Perfection. But perfection has a flaw. It assumes the system cannot be surpassed. And beyond perfection lies something the program never fully understood. Not control, not power, not precision. Inevitability. Perfection ends fights. Apex ends systems. At this level, Weapon X no longer produced tools. It produced forces, not controlled, not predictable, not fully containable. What stands here is not the program's success. But the moment its creation surpassed the blueprint, two paths reached this height. Logan was never meant to become Apex. He was meant to be controlled, broken, conditioned, rewritten, adamantium fused to bone, memories shattered, identity stripped, pain used as programming. The Windsor-Smith Weapon X experiment was not about creating strength, it was about creating obedience through suffering. But something went wrong, or perhaps something went right. Logan did not become predictable. He adapted. The more the program tried to script him, the more he rewrote himself. Pain became rhythm, damage became signal, survival became instinct beyond conditioning. Where other weapons obeyed triggers, Logan began anticipating them. And then he escaped. Not in rage alone, but in awareness. There is a quiet realization buried beneath the violence of his escape. Logan was no longer reacting to the system. He was reading it, moving ahead of it, outgrowing it. The program that sought to control him became the environment he learned to survive. And once survival becomes adaptation, control becomes impossible. Logan is Apex not because he is strongest, but because he cannot be finished. Every attempt to end him becomes data. Every injury becomes evolution. Every cage becomes a lesson in breaking cages. Weapon X built a weapon. Logan became a will, and will does not obey design. If Logan is inevitability through survival, Weapon H is inevitability through force. Clayton Cortez was not broken into the Weapon X mold. He was engineered beyond it, a fusion of Hulk, gamma physiology, and Wolverine's regenerative architecture. Stabilized through military discipline rather than feral instinct. Gamma strength without loss of tactical mind. Adamantium claws without fragility. Regeneration layered on top of transformation. Weapon H does not escalate slowly. He arrives overwhelming. There are moments where he tears through kaiju-scale threats from within, where containment protocols fail not because they were weak, but because they were irrelevant. Force at this level does not negotiate. It replaces resistance. Yet unlike Logan, Weapon H retains structure, training, discipline, mission logic. He is not chaos refined. He is power directed. And that is what makes him terrifying, because overwhelming force guided by intention becomes unstoppable momentum. Where Logan cannot be broken, Weapon H cannot be stopped. Two different paths, same destination. Most people misunderstand the summit. Apex is not about size, not about raw strength, not about who hits harder. Apex is about systems collapsing faster than they can respond. Logan turns damage into survival faster than control can reform. Weapon H turns force into victory faster than resistance can adapt. At this level, survival itself becomes the weapon. Pain becomes acceleration. Resistance becomes fuel. Weapon X wanted control. Instead, it created inevitability, and inevitability cannot be contained. File closed. What you pulled from the tank today wasn't hope. It was procedure. Weapon X never chased power. It chased control. It took a person, hollowed them out, and replaced identity with switches. Slide the humanity down, compliance goes up. Pain becomes programmable. Failure becomes usable. Survival becomes a function. That was the theory. But somewhere along the ladder, the system stopped producing weapons and started producing forces. Failure was not waste. It was a charge waiting for the right moment. Instinct was not chaos. It was hunger with direction. Weapons did not overpower. They converted. Control did not win fights. It erased resistance. Power did not strike harder. It fed. Perfection did not improvise. It executed. And Apex was never strength. Apex was inevitability. Weapon X believed pain could create obedience, but pain did something else. It created adaptation. It created survival. It created will, and will cannot be programmed. If this felt less like a power ranking and more like a descent, good, because Weapon X was never about becoming stronger. It was about becoming something else, something faster than control, something colder than intention, something that survives long after the system that built it collapses. So next time you see one of these names, Logan, X-23, Sabretooth, Wade, don't ask, how strong are they? Ask, what did the program turn them into? If this changed how you see Weapon X, subscribe, because next time we go deeper, not into the bodies, but into the mind. How conditioning becomes identity, how pain becomes control, how monsters learn to think. Weapon X wasn't the end. It was the beginning. Helmet on, lights down, breathe, if you still need to.